The Lumix S9 has been on my radar ever since it was announced. It really caught my eye. I love the idea of a super tiny, compact camera. I mean, who doesn't? It's awesome. You can take it anywhere you want, something that can fit in your pocket, even though we all know that with full frame lenses, it's not actually pocketable, but the camera body is very small, lightweight, and the price point is highly compelling as well. Right now, the Lumix S9 actually got a price reduction, so I think brand new, it's only like $1,400, which if you consider all things for a full frame photography camera, that's a great, great price point for something this small, compact, and with all the features that it has. Now, word of caution or warning, I haven't used the Lumix S9 myself. Like I said, it caught my eye, but it didn't catch my wallet just yet. It is not a video camera. It has a lot of great video features, and Panasonic, to their credit, removed some of the built-in recording limits that were hard-coded into the firmware with a firmware update. So now, from my understanding, all those recording limits have been removed, but the camera still can overheat, and if you push it to its limit in video, you're going to probably hit a wall. It's not the workhorse that you would get with something like the GH7 or the S5 Mark II, whether you're looking for Micro Four Thirds or full frame. The S9, as being part of the S series, is full frame, and it's really great on paper, but it does have one huge problem that's holding it back and holding me back from making this type of purchase. And it's the problem that has been plaguing Lumix and Panasonic for quite a while now, is that they really invested. So Micro Four Thirds, renowned for being small, lightweight, compact, and Micro Four Thirds for a long time invested in that mindset, making things small and easy to take with you anywhere. It's actually one of the great benefits of Micro Four Thirds and why I still use it, because I can fit more camera bodies, more lenses in one bag than I can with full frame. I mean, it's almost like 3 times as much stuff as I can fit in a bag. I haven't done the exact math, but it feels like I can bring so much more with me when I'm shooting Micro Four Thirds than when I'm shooting full frame on my S5 Mark II. The body is kind of bigger. It's actually not bigger than, and that's the problem we're going to get into with the Micro Four Thirds side. And then there's a problem with the S9. Trust me, I'm getting there. But the full frame glass, the S lenses are big, bulky, because they're full frame glass. So with Micro Four Thirds, it's a great benefit that it's so small and compact. And there's lenses that relate to it, but the problem has become with all the new Micro Four Thirds cameras, the bodies have gotten bigger. And then the inverse is true on the S line of cameras. So the S1, the S5, now the S9, the bodies are getting smaller, but the lenses are still big full frame lenses. There's not really a good, compelling, compact pancake lens or 2 or 3 for the L mount. And that's what's holding me back, is if I'm getting something like the Lumix S9, I want a super small compact pancake lens that still has the great benefits of full frame. You know, I want a fast aperture, get that shallow depth of field. And I'm, understanding of optics and physics, you can only go so small for full frame. But if you look at E-mount or RF mount, there are equivalent lenses that are in that kind of compact pancake small size that the L mount just doesn't have yet. And I would hope that Panasonic or Lumix, I assume they're well understanding of this pain point, that they've released a camera that's ultra compact, but there really isn't a compelling lens that seals the deal, for me anyway. They are releasing some smaller lenses for full frame L mount, but they're not exactly what I'm looking for just yet. The aperture is a little too slow. They're still not quite as compact as I might like, and I'm fine with a prime. One of my favorite lenses for Micro Four Thirds is the 20mm 1.7. It's a pancake lens, super tiny. If you have a small Micro Four Third camera, that lens is basically nothing. It's a little larger than a lens cap. And that's the kind of equivalent that I'd be looking for on full frame, something like a 40mm fast, like an f2.8. If it's small, ultra compact, even like a 35mm compact, pancake lens would be awesome and would go a long way in really sealing the deal on something like the Lumix S9. So we find ourselves in this strange conundrum. Micro Four Thirds has tiny lenses, but the bodies keep getting bigger. The Lumix S line has smaller and smaller camera bodies, but the lenses are still too big and bulky to really take full advantage of that compact size of the S9. Now, if you don't really care about ultra portability and being super compact, the S9 is a great option, especially when it comes to photography with some light video features on the side. And like I said, it just got a price reduction. So really, it's quite a steal right now, actually. But the problem being is if you know you're married to larger lenses anyway, something like the S5 Mark II, you can find used for about the same price point, $1,400, maybe $1,500 after tax. And if the lenses are the size they're going to be regardless, so let's say you want like an 85 1.4, which I don't have in this room, but I have in my case in the other room, something from Sigma or Panasonic. These lenses are big no matter what. So if you're looking at it going, okay, do I want the S9, the compact body, even though the lens is still gigantic? Or do I just get a slightly larger body, the S5 Mark II, get the built-in fan, get all the extra great video features? Now, and it's kind of the same price with if you're comparing new to used anyway. You're kind of wondering, well, what's really pulling me to the S9? And I think to like I said, to fully seal that deal, I think Panasonic needs to get these, or Lumix, rather, however you want to call them. I always like to say Lumix, but then at a certain point, that could even be confusing for people because it's, anyway, off topic. The S9 needs the smaller lenses, and the problem is the longer they delay this, Panasonic, Lumix, if they don't get these lenses out sooner rather than later, what's going to happen is that they're constantly, they're sealing their fate that they've always had, which is they're always playing catch up. If you look at now, finally the Lumix cameras have phase detect autofocus, good quality continuous autofocus in video with good subject detection. We finally have that. Now in 2024, started rolling out 2023, maybe even 2022, but it took a long time for Lumix to finally catch up to what Canon and Sony had been doing for years, probably almost a decade if I looked at it on a timeline. And the same will be true of these lenses. It's great to keep rolling out smaller camera bodies. I know that appeals to me. I'm sure it appeals to a lot of you. But if they drag their feet on these lenses and they don't have a good, pancake lens or two or three, it's really hard to, you're just gonna be playing catch up 5 years, 10 years down the road. And the same is true on the long end, which doesn't really apply to me all that much, but I know the L mount is in desperate need of some longer focal lengths. There's a lot of mid-range stuff. There's certainly some decent offerings on the wide end. Again, not too much in that pancake realm, but still there's some good L mount offerings, except if you're into wildlife, if you're into sports or event where you need that reach, you need that distance. From my understanding, L mount is pretty lacking there as well. And of course, you can adapt older glass and stuff, but you're not taking advantage of all the awesome native features that we have now, like phase detect autofocus. So I think there's a lot of catch up that L mount needs to do when it comes to lenses. The camera bodies in terms of features, performance, price point, all stellar, incredible, huge bang for your buck. That's why I'm a Lumix fan, and that's why I have only Lumix in my case. But I still feel like there's a lot of room to grow, where they're leaving a lot on the table. What's that phrase? There's something like you're not maximizing your full potential, and that's why I think Lumix continues to lag behind in terms of popularity when it comes to something as robust as Sony and the E-mount that has been invested in heavily for, probably over 10 years now. I don't know exactly when E-mount rolled out, but it's been a while. RF mount, Canon is doing okay with getting stuff out there. They kind of locked it down, got all their proprietary Canon lenses. They weren't really too friendly with the third parties. That kind of shot them in the foot a little bit compared to the EF mount, if you're old enough to remember EF mount. Very popular, almost the universal mount that everyone used for mirror box cameras. Now with RF, seemingly less popular, but you still are going to have your Canon enthusiasts who get the Canon bodies and buy the Canon glass. And that's great. Like there's plenty of people out there. I'm not one of them, but it certainly has its fan base. And those cameras are incredibly popular because Canon just has that amazing reputation and loyalty built in. So if Lumix wants to, dabble in this realm of like the S9 for content creators, for travel vloggers, for just your kind of grab and go camera in your bag, I think they need to put a little bit more thought into making lenses that pair nicer with the S9 compared to some of the stuff they've announced. I'm forgetting exactly what the lens is. They have, is it an 18 to something or another? But it's just kind of slow. It's it's small, but like it's kind of one of those like kit lenses where you're not getting the maximum performance out of the camera because you're so limited by what the lens can do. So investing in better optics, more compact optics, more aesthetically pleasing, more of that like art series that Sigma has done such a great job investing in. They have their art line, which is highly compelling for a lot of people because they want, if you're going to spend money on cameras or lenses, you really want to get the most out of it. And it's something I would actually recommend now, where back, I don't want to say 10, 20 years ago, the premium stuff was so expensive. You kind of had to make do with the cheap, do-it-yourself, knockoff, third-party, whether it was like a speed booster or even lighting equipment. Back in the day, it was Kino Flows, and you got the Mole Richardson lights. Everything was so expensive. Even the first LEDs, from Arri were like super expensive. And yeah, it's premium, it's super high quality, but there's just no realistic way to make that, meet the needs of an independent content creator or, prosumer level type person, someone who's maybe just doing weddings, corporate gigs, that sort of thing, paying the bills, but they don't have excess money like a Hollywood film set might have. Those type of people always had to kind of make do with the DIY projects or the cheap knockoff, like buy something, off of eBay. But nowadays, the prices have come down so much and the technology has gotten so great and it's so compelling. There's no sense in spending $500, let's say, on a cheap subpar lens when you could spend, $750 or maybe even $1,000 on a really good premium, professional lens. I think the gaps there have really been taken away to the point where it is worth it spending a little bit more to have the thing that's going to last you basically forever or throughout the use of that equipment versus buying the cheaper version to save a couple bucks, but then you end up doubling your cost later anyway when you end up realizing, hey, I actually want the better version, I want the good version, and buying that later. That, I don't know, the buyer's remorse or whatever it might be, where you think you're saving money, but you actually spend money later. It used to be more of a compelling case for that type of purchase. But nowadays, it's really like, if you know you want something and it's going to cost you an extra $500 or $1,000, just make that investment. Make the investment in yourself. Make the investment in your equipment so you're not buying one thing just to replace it later with the slightly upgraded version. Just go for the upgrade right from the beginning. And of course, everyone has their breaking point where they just can't afford anymore. And that's totally fine too. Like, even the cheapest stuff now is still way better than anything we were shooting with 10 years ago. So you really can't go wrong. But I do like to think of, if I'm going to buy an S9, I want the right lenses to go with it. I don't want to have to buy a kind of like so-so lens now just to have to go buy the better version in a couple years when it finally comes out. I think pushing those products out now would be really wise for Lumix to do, and just get that in front of people, show the offerings and say, you want a small camera? Well, here's some small lenses to go with it, and really, complete that vision of an ultra compact full frame camera. Sigma was sort of on the right track with the, what's that camera called? Is it the LP, the FP, something like that? I think it's the FP or the F. And it's kind of cool, interesting, ultra compact full frame camera. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if you don't have good pancake lenses to supplement it. And of course, you can use your regular lenses if it's just L mount, there's nothing holding you back. So if there's a situation where you need a particular lens, great. But at least having something small in your pocket, in your bag, that you can pop on there would go a long way, I think, in really showcasing and shining light on what these ultra compact full frame cameras have to offer. Whereas right now, they're kind of neat as a novelty. I like the idea of it, something ultra lightweight that gets me close to the same quality as the S5 Mark II. But I don't see myself making that purchase just yet unless I have a good lens or two to pair with it.